There's a strange part of motorcycle culture in China that I didn't really question when I was young. For a lot of Chinese riders, a leader bike isn't just another motorcycle, it's the top of the mountain. You start with a smaller bike, you move up, and somewhere along the way, 1000cc becomes the peak you are trying to reach. When I was in my 20s, I wanted one so badly that I was willing to skip things I actually wanted just to save money for it. A new pair of sneakers. Why? I already had shoes. A couple of more pieces of fried chicken at KFC. Forget it. That's money toward the bike. Going to the movies with girlfriend. Well, that was money too. Looking back, it sounds pretty ridiculous, but I'm definitely not alone on this. For a lot of Chinese motorcycle riders, getting a leader bike is almost treated like reaching the final level of the game. You start small, you upgrade, then you upgrade again. And somewhere along that road, 1000cc starts to look like the finish line. I've been riding long enough to know that I wasn't the only one thinking this way. So why is that? Why does the road for so many Chinese riders seem to end at 1000cc? To understand that, you have to understand how motorcycles have changed in China. 30 or 40 years ago, motorcycles were mostly tools. They carried people, carried goods, and got you from one place to another. If the motorcycle did what you needed to do, that was enough. And honestly, there wasn't much choice anyway. Today, that's completely different. For many Chinese riders, a motorcycle is no longer just a tool, or sometimes even more than a tool. And once a motorcycle becomes a toy, the way we choose one changes. Think about the iPhone. It's still a phone. It's still a communication tool. But depending on the person using it, it can also be entertainment, a hobby, something they enjoy owning, or even a way of showing a little bit of who they are. So if you have the money, you might buy the regular iPhone, or you might buy the Pro Max. Both will make phone calls. Both will do most of the things you actually need a phone to do. But in China, when people have the financial ability to choose, I think we were often more willing to choose the higher spec version, or even the flagship. And this isn't just about phones. You can see the same kind of thinking with computers, watches, cars, and even houses. When something belongs to you and other people can see it, your decision isn't always based purely on what you actually need. Sometimes there's another consideration. It makes you look a little better, a little more successful, a little more capable. And motorcycles are no different. Once a Chinese rider feels that they've gained enough experience to handle a bigger motorcycle, upgrading can start to feel almost inevitable. A bigger engine, more power, better electronics, a bigger, more impressive machine. And let's be honest, it looked like pretty damn cool. So if I can afford a better one, why wouldn't I buy the better one? Even if I don't actually need 1000cc for the way I ride. But here's the strange part. Why 1000cc? Why isn't 400 enough? Why not 600? Why not 800? Why does the road so often seem to end at the leader class? I think part of the answer is that we don't just buy motorcycles based on what we need today. We also buy them based on where we think we were supposed to go next. And that's where the invisible roadmap comes in. Maybe you start with the 300, then you move up. And eventually, somewhere in the back of your mind, there's that number, 1000. The mountain is there. You can see the peak, and sooner or later you want to climb it. I know this because I really did. When I was in my 20s, that leader bike wasn't just something I thought would be nice to have someday. It was a goal. I wanted to get there as soon as possible. So I tried to save as much money as I could, because in my head, there was these simple questions. Do I want this more than I want the motorcycle? And back then, the answer was usually no. Looking back now, it's actually pretty funny. But at that time, I was completely serious. That motorcycle was the mountain, and the leader bike was the summit. Of course, things change. Today, I see more and more riders in China who ain't nearly as obsessed with displacement as there used to be. And I think experience has a lot to do with that. Some people are like me, they've already climbed that mountain. They've owned that leader bike. They've ridden different motorcycles, different engine size, different kinds of bikes. And after enough time in the saddle, you start to understand something very simple. What you want and what you actually need ain't always the same thing. Wanting a leader bike is perfectly reasonable. I still understand exactly why people love them. The power, the sound, the technology, the feeling of have all that performance sitting underneath you. There's nothing wrong with any of that. What changed for me is that I no longer automatically think bigger means better. Sometimes I want a big motorcycle simply because I love it. That's a perfectly good reason, but that's different from believing that I need it. After riding for this long, displacement is still important to me. It's just no longer the only thing I look at. I care more about what kind of riding I'm actually going to do, where I'm going to ride, and whether the motorcycle makes sense for me. But here's what I find interesting. I don't think this obsession with displacement is going to simply disappear from Chinese motorcycle culture, because that mountain is still there. A young rider gets his first motorcycle, looks ahead, and sees the same invisible road. And somewhere up there, still visible from the bottom, is that number, 1000 cc. I used to think I had to climb it. Now I know I don't. But once you've seen the peak, it's very hard to forget it's there.